Good morning. I'd like to speak to us this morning from the theme, making, making your marriage last. Now, it is no indication of the duration of my marriage that my wife's not here this morning. She is attending a graduation service of the son of one of her longest and best friends who flew in from Alabama. I'm going to excuse myself for a minute. So making your voice last. The commentary on this passage is very challenging, particularly to the liberal preacher. And in fact, I have to confess, when I first saw this on the lectionary reading list, the lectionary is that list of scriptures that the church, and this is for all mainline churches, prescribes to be read in the churches for 3 years. They have a whole list of readings. And the reason for the lectionary is so that the congregations get a wide breadth of the text and not just the favorite Bible verses of your pastor of the moment. But we have some discretion. There are 4 verses to choose from. And of course, in a non-liturgical church like the UCC, I can skip it altogether if I don't like any of them. So I must confess that my first impulse was, next. The UCC also offers on their website a commentary from one of our writers, one of our theologians. And the first line of their commentary was, "Don't skip this passage." So I was immediately convicted and said, I will spend some time before I dismiss and go on to something easier to preach. It's challenging to the mainline liberal pastor because of its hard saying about divorce. We've come a long way, and this is a new generation, but 50 years ago, divorce was a scandal. Some of you, not me, are old enough to remember when divorce was a scandal. And so that's just where it begins to get hard. But then the truly liberal or progressive pastor further has to grapple with the impact of this saying on same-gender loving couples, on marriage equality. And after all of that, we then have to figure out how to speak a word on marriage itself. So first thing to note, in the first century of this common era, within the Jewish faith, divorce by husbands of Jewish wives was very easy. That's the law that Jesus referred these Pharisees to. For almost any reason that the man found in the relationship that he was unpleased or not pleased, would simply write a bill of divorcement called a get, hand it to the woman, and cast her out. So when one understands the context in which these words were spoken, the idea that Jesus would oppose divorce was actually a liberal idea for its time, because it took away, it dismantled a part of male privilege that made women not just property, but disposable property. This passage is recorded in 3 of the 4 Gospels. In Matthew's version, he softens the hard saying by allowing divorce in cases of unchastity. And what's meant there is when the wife comes to the husband, she's supposed to arrive chaste or a virgin. And if for some reason he has been deceived and discovers that she was not a virgin when he married her, he's allowed to divorce her. Matthew allowed that exception to Jesus' stance, as reported by Mark, that there are no circumstances for divorce. And then they got to the house, Jesus and the disciples. And even the disciples said, Jesus, we can't go around preaching it. This is not good news to men who want to be able to divorce their wives whenever they want to and for whatever reason they want to. So in the house, Jesus counseled them further. And here's where it gets tricky. In the house, the text goes on to say that a woman or wife may also divorce her husband. And that's when we know that these words are not words of the Jewish Jesus at all. But these words were put in the mouth of Jesus by the early church that was trying to accommodate itself to a new Gentile Roman culture. The church had spread beyond Judea and was trying to make its way in the Gentile world. And in the Roman world, women could divorce men as men could divorce women. So the conservative early church arrives in this Roman Gentile culture, and suddenly not only can men divorce women, but women can divorce men. And so they say, wait a minute, we got to put some brakes on this, or all of our marriages will dissolve. So they saw their church being swept away in the wrong direction. Men and women considered marriage such a light thing that would it be cast off on the first morning of burnt toast? You know, we men really should learn how to use a toaster. So that's what the early church was struggling with. But again, for those of us progressive pastors, these words challenge us on yet another level. Because every time we hear these words spewed by the conservatives opposing marriage equality, what do they always say? Therefore, a man shall leave his mother and father and cleave unto his wife. From the beginning, God made them male and female. We hear it all the time. And so how do we respond? We respond like the early church responded. We accommodate to the culture in which we find ourselves. That's what they did. That's what the church has always done. But we're not the early church. We're the now church, 2,000 years later. And like the early church, we are moving in the direction of the culture in which we live. A culture, like the Roman culture, that gave more rights to women than the Jewish culture in which the church was first formed. And we recognize in this new culture, in this new day, that all persons are made in the image of God, gay or straight. And sometimes a man leaves his mother and his father and cleaves unto another man. And sometimes a woman leaves her mother and her father and cleaves unto another woman. And the two become one flesh. And what do we say to that? All together now. What God has joined together, let no one separate. What God has joined together, let no one separate. No one county clerk, no one justice of the peace, no one preacher politician, no one. No one. All couples receive the blessing of our church, and we regard them equally. So now that I can speak to all couples present, let's talk about marriage. Do you want to know how to make your marriage last? Make your marriage first. Make it first by working harder at your marriage than you work at your job. That's right. A strong marriage takes work. We don't just fall in love and just stay there. It takes work. Make your marriage last by making your marriage first. Have faith in your marriage, deep faith. Believe in your marriage like your life depended on it, because it does. Have faith in your marriage, faith that if you work at it, it can work. When I counsel engaged couples before their wedding, I have a speech that I give them. I'm going to share it with you, regardless of the stage of your relationship. And I say to them, you all are just so much in love. It's so wonderful. You're so young and beautiful. What are you, 25? And you're planning to live your lives together. And if you live an average age to 75, then you've got 50 years. And it just might be a little too much to expect that from this day forward, things are going to get better and better and better until you explode in ecstasy. It doesn't quite work that way. I'll give you this right now. I'll give you 20% versus 80%. 20% of the years that you will be married will be less than ideal. Some will be hard. Some will be crushingly hard. But in exchange for accepting the reality that 20% might be less than ideal, I give you 80% that will be wonderful wedded bliss. So what you hope, if you're willing to take that deal, what you hope is that those 10 years, 20 out of 50, 20% of 50 is 10 years, that those 10 years don't all come together and they don't all come up front. What I'm saying to you is that these 10 years will be sprinkled throughout your married life. So you'll go for 5 and then you'll hit a rough year. You'll go for 6 more and you'll hit 2 rough years. You'll go for 3 more, you might hit 4 or 5 rough years. But over the course of that marriage, you'll have 80% good years, 20% bad. So this is how you do it. When you hit that tough year, because of what I've promised you, you know that on the other side of these 2 difficult years are 7 more good years. And you know that on the other side of that one really crushing year are 10 years of the best years of your life. That's what you must believe when you enter into a marriage. And if you do all of these things and you still cannot bring joy, happiness, love, or hope, then divorce. Divorce. Divorce with dignity and with grace, if you can. You each need it. Your children deserve it. I wish somebody had preached this sermon before I got married the first time. So I speak these words from experience. I believe God created us for relationship with God and with each other. Now, not every loving relationship is or needs to be a marriage. Because love is as human a need as air or water or food. So I encourage you, whatever your circumstance, find love in life. And whoever you love and whoever loves you will be sharing a life of love. It may not last a lifetime, but for all of the time it lasts, it will fill each moment of your life with love and joy and hope. Let the people of God say, amen.